We're waiting for Ben to join us. I'm sure he'll do so soon. Hello, I hope you're all doing well. We are waiting for Ben. I apologize to Jacob already that this, well, I'll wait to tell Ben, but this might be a triggering, I think. We'll see. We'll see how we go about it. Oh, you know what I didn't send? I didn't send Ben the summary from last week. Ben's telling me he needs 5 more minutes. No problem. We will gladly give you 5 more minutes. To those who are waiting, bear with us. We appreciate your patience. Is this the right one? Yeah. Hello, sir.
Just real quick, I do want to say, can I just say one more thing real quick?
Sure.
So I'm wearing, as you can see, headphones, and they're at low battery right now. So if later out I cut out, I'll just take my headphones off, and I won't speak, and then I'll put them into charge. So just as a heads up, because that might happen.
I appreciate that. Aside from that, though, how are you doing, Kirk? Are you feeling well? Is your family well? Have you had an interesting week?
I've had an interesting week, yeah. Although unfortunately this week chess club was canceled for me.
Shucks. I'm sorry about that. I'm sure that is very enjoyable and stimulating on multiple levels. Very good. And what about your last time on someone's stream? You were talking about maybe getting a job or working somewhere or starting to work somewhere.
So next week I'm going to be working at Buc-ee's. It's only going to be certain days, right? Right now the plan is that they told me that it was going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be evening shifts, so Tuesday and Thursday evenings.
Okay, and are you excited for this?
Well, I'm excited and anxious. I mean, Buc-ee's seems like an easier job than like gardening, or lawn mowing, but I'm still not. This is my first like out of thing job, so I'm a little bit nervous.
Being a little nervous, or jumping in a little, getting in a little over your head is okay and healthy. Obviously, you don't want to get overwhelmed by it, but the world can be overwhelming, and having that feeling is not necessarily a bad thing. So you could use that, sort of in chi, right? Take that force and use it. So I think that's going to be great. Take yourself seriously, work hard, pay attention. You will do fantastic.
Yeah.
While we wait for Ben, was there any questions you had about the topic we're going to get into right now, or do you want to?
No, it's just I mean, I'm just curious what exactly we are talking about, because it's talking about the restatement of the Davidic thing. I'm just curious if there's anything in specific the thing's going to be reading about.
Well, we're going to discuss the prayer. I mean, it's going to be. I'm thinking as we're speaking how best to approach it, because we'll have to discuss, who Messiah is, who this horn is, what is, Why is it? I mean, even the language over here is contradictory, but again, like that's
Yeah,
our
I do
sages.
actually. Yeah, I actually
Yeah.
do think I have a question about this. So this is going to be the restatement of the Davidic Messiah at the Messianic era.
This is what we're asking for.
Yeah, so I have a question about the view of the Messianic era in relation to Judaism and the philosophy of history, if that's okay.
Well, now we're gonna get into it. Bring it up in the proper place.
Okay.
Ben, shalom.
Shalom, shalom. How's it going?
Doing all right, sir?
Merci. Yeah, Kirk, you're good.
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Amazing.
I would like to say, actually, there is a communal prayer in my neighborhood today. One of our neighbors, their son, is waiting for a heart transplant. So may this learning bring a blessing and a full recovery onto Michael ben Bracha Rina, and we're hoping him all the best and health, him to his family, and everyone else could jump on this blessing as well. Everyone who's not feeling well or is injured or sick, may God redeem you. All right, Ben. I think I sent you the last week's
Yeah, bring it
review.
up.
Let's jump into that. I was just telling Kirk right now. I'm trying to think how best to go about the blessing today, but it's definitely going to be triggering to Jacob. I warned him. But I think it's a very, very important blessing they're all very important blessings. And as like we've been going, we're really getting deep into this, and maybe this one will go on to next week as well. We'll see. Maybe I'll be a little too long-winded, but take us there. Go ahead.
Okay. Transcript. We go. Okay. So
Take it away, Ben.
Just a second. Let's get my computer in order. Okay. ולירושלים עירך ברחמים תשוב. To Jerusalem, your city, may you return in mercy. So that's the part of the blessing we had last week. Main question we discussed is why do we have a separate blessing for Jerusalem, for Yerushalayim? Why not simply pray for the return to the land of Israel? Main answer that we gave is that Jerusalem is not just a city. Jerusalem is the meeting point between God and Israel, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, and national life and holiness.
I don't know if we said every one of those things, but I see where it's going.
The phrase, may you return, means in the blessing, right? When God returns, so what are we asking for here? God returning to Jerusalem, Israel returning to Jerusalem, and the Shekhinah returns openly into history.
I'm just saying this narrative also weaves through the next blessings as well. So we'll get into these topics again. But Baksha, go ahead.
So the word berachamim, with mercy, teaches redemption can come willingly through mercy, or if it's not with mercy, you're not berachamim, it can come through judgment and suffering.
Through deen, right?
Yeah. The question is whether we cooperate with redemption in time. Who is this person?
Oh, we did talk about him, Andre Nehar. We talked about he's this philosopher who spoke about famously had these three different stages of the prayer. One was talking about the other Jew, the Israelis, and then eventually realized it's talking about him. Right, third stage, exile, collapse, Jerusalem becomes personally relevant to every Jew.
Out of curiosity, is this he's a Jewish author, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So we have the first stage. I think you just said it, Chazdi, the comfortable exile. Jerusalem is God's city, but not necessarily my responsibility.
Right. Let him do his thing. I could do my thing over here. He could redeem. He could do what he wants. Right. The second stage, and again, this is corresponding to like the Nazis sort of closing in. The second stage was supporting Zionism from a distance, right? Which is others need Jerusalem, but I could live my life outside. right? And then the third stage is once, they come knocking on the door, realizing that no, like it becomes personally relevant to every Jew that like we need to be redeemed actually.
Yeah, I actually have a question about
Here, I
this.
would also, if I was Jacob, sorry, I would say that the Zionism, there's a distinction here between political Zionism and just the returning. So
Yeah.
here,
Definitely.
Zionism from a distance is not necessarily the political aspect of it.
Correct. Here, when it says Zionism, you're right.
I'm just mentioning it because it's it's a basic tenet that even if you're Jewish and not Zionist, you still acknowledge you want to return to the land, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the blessing is to
Right.
return to Zion, right? So obviously we're talking about like the OG Zion, the
Right.
the real deal. Having said that, you're right. When we're speaking about here, when we speak here, it's sort of fast and loose with this concept of Zionism as well, because, and I think people that know us already at this point and knowing each other, when we say Zionism, we're not talking about just the political movement. We obviously mean much, much more than that as well. However, that being said, clearly there's a distinction between Jacob and I when I do feel much more that I have relevant with the Zionism or what we could do with political Zionism, but we'll get into that also probably today.
I do have a question about this, if that's okay, which
Sure.
is there's a book about the philosophy of history called The Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper, where he argues the idea that history follows inevitable laws leads to totalitarianism, and he uses the examples of the philosophies of Plato, Hegel, and Marx as examples of how totalitarianism can be inspired by this idea of inevitable history. And I'm curious, how can the Jewish belief in a messianic era be compatible with something like a rejection of totalitarianism, given this connection between this certainty of inevitable historical laws with totalitarianism in history?
Well, that's also a question I think, again, we'll get into when we get into the blessing with like, what is the political power that's attached to it, right? Like what is this king that you're talking about? So and what's, again, that's a broader question, which also gets into like, what is the system you're bringing on? But again, good question. Let's talk about it soon.
Okay.
Write it down.
Shir HaShirim was presented as the drama of exile, the Song of Songs. God and Israel keep missing each other. Sometimes God is ready and Israel is not. Sometimes Israel wakes up too late. Exile is a crisis of timing.
Right. I remember saying that, cholat avani, it's like this, it's he says it's sick. It's like it's a sick relationship also with regards to it's unhealthy, right? Which is like you're constantly missing each other. Yes, exile is not the ideal, right? God is hidden within creation. Israel in exile understands divine hiddenness, but our mission is not to remain hidden, right? Our mission is to redeem the Shekhinah from exile. This is actually a quite deep idea over here, which is again like Hashem has a specific, unique relationship with us because we too, like him, he had to remove himself in a certain sense so there could be us here. And so the nation that understands him and has a unique relationship with him is also a nation that is being removed as well, a nation that comes from exile. Awesome, right? Returning to Jerusalem means restoring the Shekhinah to history, reconnecting heaven and earth, making holiness present inside real life, right? We talk about a seventh-day world. We want an eighth-day world right now. We discussed the next phrase, v'tishkon betocha uveneh ota, may you dwell within it and rebuild it, right? An important question. What does blessing ask? Why does the blessing ask God to dwell in Jerusalem before asking him to rebuild it? Right? It doesn't say first he should rebuild, then he should dwell. Jerusalem must have a soul before it has a building. The divine presence gives its city its meaning, but the physical building is also part of redemption. Jerusalem includes homes, roads, public institutions, government, economics, architecture, infrastructure, right? We spoke about this idea of, right, Mashiach is here. He's just in traffic, right? It's hard to actually get there. Judaism does not separate holiness from the physical world. God is not only in prayer and Torah. God must also be revealed in society, politics, economics, and civilization. The temple must be inside a city because I just on that first note that we just said, we also spoke about that with the judges and the politicians, also for them, the yoatzim, right? That they need to be mirroring God. Like, again, that's not the experience we have with these systems right now.
Yeah.
The temple, the Mikdash, must be inside the city because you and I were talking about this, Kirk, as well. Why a city, not a farm, right? Judaism is not monastic. Holiness is not an escape from society. Holiness must enter public life, right? I can't just be in a little village or or a temple that's all the way out in the distance, like some monks participate in. Not that you can't achieve some sort of level of ascendance, but that's not a blessing to everyone, right? The danger of Jerusalem becoming only material, though, right? Nationalism without holiness, power without morality, a construction without a soul. It talks a little about what you're hinting at, Kirk, earlier. The opposite danger, there's the opposite danger, right? Spirituality that rejects statehood, politics, economics, and responsibility. Just like Enoch, then if you have there's no manifestation for that spirituality, then you can't be present here. Then the goal: unite spirit and matter, unite heaven and earth, make the physical world a vessel, right, for holiness. We then discuss may the throne of David, your servant, be swiftly prepared within it. Keyword tachin, prepare. I think actually the word in Sfaria was establish. But
I don't establish, yeah.
Right. This means redemption comes in stages, right? First stage is Mashiach ben Yosef, Messiah son of Joseph. We speak about this very often over here. National revival, statehood, army, economy, political rebuilding, the body redemption, right? There's a universality to it as well. Second stage is Mashiach ben David, which we'll talk about in the next blessing soon. Torah, prophecy, universal morality, spiritual purpose, divine kingship as well. So redemption. Yosef represents the political. Let's just skip through this, right? We know he represents the danger with Yosef is assimilation. Assimilation, losing Jewish identity inside civilization as well. All right, we did this. Yosef's correction at the end of his life. He asks that his bones be brought back to Israel. He realizes Egypt is not home. Civilization alone cannot redeem the world. We played around with this idea of Herzl, right? He is first believes in assimilation. After Dreyfus affair, he realizes Jews need a national return. Rav Kook saw Herzl as connected to the footsteps of Messiah as well. He also wants to be buried over here. Rav Kook's thought, the generation of redemption may look secular and rebellious on the outside, but inside it may carry a hidden holiness. It rebuilds a national vessel of the future spiritual revelation. I think we also read that very, very radical statement, right? That these lawbreakers and the audacity of these rebellious children, they will, supersede the prophecy of Moses, and they will, bring back the primordial Adam. So very, very, very intense. The crisis of Zionism, nationalism is necessary, but nationalism alone is not enough. Right? A nation that exists only for Israel becomes spiritually empty. Divine image, right? We spoke about Mashiach ben Yosef being the strong rootstock, and Mashiach ben David being a refined graft. How they work together, related to the prophecy in Yechezkel, how it's no fruit come out of it, but it's extremely strong. And for that, you need to have that source over there that then you could be grafted on top of, so you could actually bring out fruit. But both need each other, right? The cutting process looks painful, but it allows for higher fruit to grow. Therefore, the crisis of Zionism may not mean redemption failed. It may mean redemption is moving from Yosef to David, right? Which is very painful. We spoke about different examples about that. Final message: we must not destroy Joseph. We must elevate Joseph towards David. Just like I talk about often, which relates to the Zionism conversation we had, which we'll talk about again. But we are not satisfied where we are right now. Me as a rabid Zionist, as Jacob says, right? We understand that we must elevate Joseph to David, right? We no longer want a kingdom or even leaders in the in its manifestation or archetype as Saul. We want King David. Our generation's task: preserve the state, army, economy, and national body while filling them with Torah, holiness, morality, and universal purpose. I'm assuming that is what Jacob would like as well. Jerusalem is ultimately the place where God and humanity reunite. Israel and the nations are blessed. Spirit and matter come together. Mashiach ben Yosef becomes elevated towards Mashiach ben David. Please God, amen. Can you hear it, son? Okay, let's jump into the next blessing.
Okay. Maybe chit chat a little bit while I do this.
Was that all? Was that all? Was that understood?
Yep.
I mean, like that you were following, Kirk. You were following. Good. Thumbs up. Great. Amazing.
That was good. It was always good to have a breakdown and to remember what we did before.
Yes.
So now let's bring up the next thing.
Yeah. Are you bringing it up or am I bringing it up?
I'll bring it up.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, now I need to just navigate to the right place. This is a process, just like the redemption. It's a process. Okay.
Okay.
Yerushalayim and Tzemach David.
Right. It's it's these short ones that actually also carry like a big punch. Et tzemach David avdecha meherat tatzmeach bekarno tarum beyeshuatecha ki yeshuatcha kivinu kol hayom baruch ata Adonai matzmiach keren yeshuah.
Okay. I'll read in English. Speedily cause the sprout of David, your servant, to flourish and exalt his power with your deliverance. We hope all day for your deliverance. Blessed are you, Adonai, who causes the power of salvation to sprout.
All right, see this again. Speedily. It's actually, it's funny because the word goes to, it's like, it's tzemach David avdecha mehera. Right over here, you're like talking about the fifth word, which is the first word.
Yeah.
Karno. Yeah, karno. All right, your servant flourish.
But his power is
power. I mean, yes, that makes sense. But we could. Well, I mean, the symbolism obviously is tough. Okay. Et tzemach David avdecha meherat tatzmiach. Okay, so. We can ask a question off the bat, right? Why are we talking about Mashiach? Which is, I think we once, I don't know if I did it like with you or I did like a separate thing about like Mashiach's names, right? One of Mashiach's names is also Tzemach. But like, why are we calling him a Tzemach? Why are we calling him a sprout?
Mm-hmm.
Should we not say bring David's kingdom or reveal the Mashiach? Restore the king, right? The return of the king.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic movie. Why are we not just saying that? And we're specifically using a language of growth over here, right? So I would say, like you were saying right now about a process, that is really the sort of the opening idea of this blessing over here, which is a sprout, right? A tzemach it starts underground. And it slowly develops, which obviously, like you said, requires time, and we need to be patient, and it also needs the right conditions, right? I need the right water, and I just unfortunately had something in my garden. He didn't make it, which is very unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But either way, right? We need, but once the right moment arrives, right? You suddenly have this beautiful growth that suddenly accelerates, right? I just have this beautiful area of the garden. This is the season. Suddenly, you have this beautiful, beautiful blossom. Right, so this is like this tension that we have over here, which is on one hand we're saying like you're saying tzemach, and you're saying mehera, right? I'm asking for gradual growth, but I'm also asking for it to happen fast, right? Yeah. Speedily. So that's like a contradiction right there. And again, we just went through Bonei Yerushalayim, right? The blessing we just read before. And then obviously we spoke about how the order is very important, right? If I first have to rebuild Jerusalem, I need this national foundation like we're talking about. We're building the Jewish sovereignty. Again, even though I hold that's true today, even if you're sitting and praying this prayer 500 years ago, you realize that first you need some sort of sovereignty. And only then can I actually ask for Mashiach to come, right? So this is really, again, the difference that you're seeing over here being teased out between Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, right? And we don't have to go through the whole list because we just went through the list a second ago of all those differences between them and their universal mission and the army and the economy. So we know this. But again, the blessing of Tzemach David is not just that we're waiting for a person. It's about maturing of like our society into its highest spiritual form. That's what we're waiting for right now. We're waiting for like, we want to take it to the next level. Well, to the final level in a certain sense, or maybe really just the beginning. But will you, indulge me for a second while I take a step back. We'll go back a little in history because I want to tease this out again. Okay. Let's first go to the tribe, right? So there's the tribe of Judah, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's go even further back. Jacob is blessing his sons, right? Before he dies in Egypt. And right, there's a famous Rashi. He wanted to legalot et haketz. He wanted to tell them the future, but he gives them these blessings. Now, you would think that our boy Reuben would get the first blessing because he's the firstborn. But Jacob doesn't give him the bracha, right? Yaakov tells him that he's pachaz, right? Pachaz kamaim, that he's unstable, right? And Reuven is, he's passionate and like there's a lot of great things about him that we see him with, but he's also impulsive. We also see that. And because of that, he is being disqualified from kingship, right? Kingship is something that needs timing and patience. And the blessing that we might have spoken about this in the past, the blessing that he gives Aryeh, right? Gur Aryeh Ata. But if you look at the blessing over there, I don't remember it all by heart, but there's different names over there, right? He's a lion and then he's a cub, and it goes through this gradual growth that Judah is going through this bracha. And you can see this in his descendant in King David himself, right? David is anointed king long before he becomes the king. Again, I recommend people see the animated film David, which is very good. But that anointing, right, when he is Moshech Oto B'Shemen, right, we anoints him when Shmuel, right, when Samuel anoints him, this is still David is walking around. I mean, King Saul is still walking around. And there's years that he's waiting. And he's also chased by Saul. And he actually has opportunities also to actually, kill Saul in the cave famously. He can take over, but he doesn't do it, right? He's not forcing history. He's allowing it to happen. And that's why I think King David is, again, one of those archetypes who understands that true kingship needs to, what's the word for lead? Bashel, to ripen. It needs to ripen. Right. Again, he's, and to be clear, David is not passive and he's very courageous. He just acts when necessary. Right. Even when he brings the stick and the stones when he's fighting Goliath. Right. He's being tactical with how he's going about that. However, why is patience so important? Obviously, we're in a world today where no one has patience for anything, but we know that if there's a leader that doesn't have the vision of patience, right, that's also like a real big problem, right? Does it mean like we never act at all? Does it mean that like all urgency is wrong? Right. Again, the gradual growth of things is history has slow periods, but also history has these sudden turning points, right? You have this with Yetziat Mitzrayim famously, which is you have this long Exodus, the process leading to Exodus is very, very long, but then it happens all of a sudden, all overnight. They have to run. We have to make the matzah. There's no time for it to grow. For it to rise. You also have this with
and you have it by the sea, but in the Midrash with Nachshon ben Aminadab, right? Like
yeah. So I was going to say we have it in Purim, right? Which there too. Vayivalu lavi et Haman, right? They hurried to bring Haman, right? He has this whole story he's planning, and suddenly, like when it's going down, she's like, "I want to have a party. I want to have another party. Quickly get him!" Like the story starts speeding up very, very quickly,
right?
And I would say, obviously, this is true also in my eyes, with the declaration of the state of Israel also happened in a very narrow window, like literally just before the British mandate ended, they went and they got all together into that room over there. Like it was nuts, right? So there too is like this very, very, like this little window of opportunity, right? There are moments when waiting is really wisdom, but there are moments like when waiting becomes a failure, like you were just saying right now with like when Nachshon ben Aminadab. There's a famous, I'm sure you've heard this before, of Beitach Ishena. Well, we first say lo bechipazon tetzu. We say this in Isaiah, right? Which is like it's not going to be in haste. You're not going to be able to go out in haste. And why is the future redemption not happening in haste all the way? Like if the Exodus happened in haste, why is Isaiah telling us that it's not going to be in haste? Now, in Egypt, again, like nature is being broken. And it's necessary because humans are trapped in slavery and there's idolatry and like they're stuck and they need this huge miracle. But I'm saying and we know this miracle itself has limitations, right? Because even though it bypasses nature, right, it doesn't fully redeem nature from within.
Right, you can't invoke miracles. Miracles happen. So it's like you don't rely on miracles. that's
but
for sure.
not only because we don't rely on miracles because they're limited. Why? Because the final redemption that we're asking for is much higher than even Yetziat Mitzrayim, even than the Exodus, right? Because we're not looking to break nature, right? It heals nature. It's here to reveal Hashem in natural historical processes. That's the fusion we want to get to. Like, let's say differently. The final Geulah, the final redemption is slower because, not because it's weaker, because it's much, much deeper, right? If the Exodus of Egypt redeemed Israel from Egypt, obviously you could see it had a lot more from that. Even the founding fathers of America clearly see themselves as Egypt as well. But the final redemption that we're all hoping for, this needs to be a redemption that redeems the whole world, right? It's not enough just to redeem the people of Israel outside. But so that's why it needs to be slow. However, we also know from Isaiah, which is Ani Hashem Beita Chishena, right? Which is I am Hashem, in its time I will hasten it, right? So the Gemara gives this famous example, which is Zachu Achishena lo Zachu Beita, as in like if the people of Israel, the nation of Israel merit it, then it will hasten it. And if they don't merit it, then it will come in its proper time. This is in Tractate Sanhedrin. I don't recall what page, but if someone wants to check it out, it's also fascinating. Now, again, we go back to this tension, which is it going to come on time or is it going to hasten it? So the answer, again, is both. Redemption has a process, but that process could move slowly or quickly, right? And this brings us, let's get back into our blessing now. Sorry for the tangent. But when we say Meharat Tzmiach, right, that we want it to be speedily, right? I'm not asking for an instant redemption. I'm asking for an acceleration of growth, right? Please go ahead.
I have a question. Is this metaphor of growth and of sprouting, do any rabbis in a Kabbalistic context bring this to like any understanding of like vegetation or farming or something like that? And
no, and yes. As a no, I can't tell you. I could think of something on top of my head of like something clear about that connection. But yes, with regards to that, all things need to grow, right? The redemption, like we were saying, it not only does it have to happen on the societal level and the infrastructure level, but on all levels, right? On all, the nature is supposed to be brought up to its holiest level. So of course, it also has to do with agriculture as well. Using that terminology has its own level of reference, aside from the analogies we're using right now. Of course, it also is connecting to the root idea of it, which is almost poetic in that certain sense, which is, yes, the rain we connect to and the food we eat and what grows from the grass or from the ground.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I do understand there's like the concept of pardes, which is different layers of abstraction. I'm just curious if there's a certain layer of abstraction in which you could connect these things.
I hear what you're saying over here. So again, yes and no. It's almost like implicit inside the wording that you would say, like if you're Mateo in the Pardes because you want to be growing inside what could be growing from there. Eventually, all of us want to be growing. So yes, I think that there's a connection over there, but I can't tell you like an exact rabbi that.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. So let me see.
I wanna jump back to what you were saying though, Ben, about well, there's this midrash, right? That the people, the children of Israel are by the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea,
Mhm.
and tribes are arguing like who is going to enter first. And then Benjamin, right, jumps in first, like, you know, this is what the Midrash says. And Judah throws stones on him. And there's like a verse in Psalms that references this. I don't remember where this verse is. But the famously the Netziv from Volozhin, he then explains that all night there was winds, right? And Judah said that, you know, this is a gradual process. The winds are going to dry out the sea, and then we could actually cross. And Benjamin said, he's like, no, if we wait until everything is dry, then there's no miracle really visible. We have to jump in now and actually show that this is like, you know, we believe in this miracle as well. And the result with both of these things happened, right? The sea split and the ground they stepped on as well. So again, this was the Midrash trying to let you know that both these visions are necessary, right? It's not one or the other. They need to be together. Judah represents his patience and this gradual development, and Benjamin represents this, you know, this courage to jump inside. However, it is a tragedy that, you know, it's not that they disagree, which is a tragedy. It's that Judah ends up throwing stones at Benjamin, right? Like, there's room for disagreement, obviously, about, you know, the pace of redemption. But, you know, if the essence obviously is a redemption of the unity of Israel, and I'm saying this lovingly, which is like clearly there's disagreement between Jacob and I, but obviously the main goal is for us to be able to walk up to the temple together, right? Like that is the main goal behind all those things. Now, to something that Kirk said, which has to do with monarchy, right? Which is really, or well, we're saying bring us back, right? Bring back the King David. So why, you know, is monarchy even the ideal, you know, form of government, right? Which is like there's a deep political question, and is this really ideal? Like among the Rishonim, as we call them, and Chazal, there's a disagreement about this. Some say that monarchy is not ideal, and it's only like because human weakness that we have to take this on, right? This is like I can't remember which in which Midrashim talk about this, but the Abarbanel and Rav Sadia Gaon. But the Rambam, the Great Eagle, rules that appointing a king is actually a positive mitzvah. Okay, that's the Rambam's view that we like to quote here often. And in his view, in the Rambam's view, you know, a king gives the people appoint the king, and the king gives the nation like unity and authority and direction, and really the ability to act historically. But again, the question is, why is the Torah commanding about a specific political system? Sometimes a monarchy works, and sometimes a democracy works, and we know that that doesn't fit all cultures. So again, then it's even, and we spoke about this in the past as well, Ben, but it's very important to understand and see that this is already inside. Our sages are discussing these things, right? When it says that when you come to the land, right? Ki tavo la'aretz ve'amarta asima alai melech kechol hagoyim asher sivoti, right? When I come to the land, and it says, and you'll say, I'll set up a king like the nations around me, right? So the Netziv gives this beautiful explanation. It says that the phrase ve'amarta, right? And you'll say, that means it's a mitzvah that becomes active when the people reach a historical point where monarchy is appropriate, right? Like I need to get to a place where I have to be in a position where I even have the time to even consider. Think about asking someone like that in all of Jewish history, basically. Like, do you want to consider like what kind of system you want? Like, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, people are murdering us left and right. Like, why would I consider what ruling? But here it's saying, okay, when you get to the point in history where you could start considering these things, then the phrase when the nations around me is not necessarily negative, right? It means that Israel has to pay attention to the political culture of the world. And a monarchy is a form, you know, that allows the nations to succeed. Then Israel also should appoint a king. But why are we dependent on the world? And this is not a bad thing. Again, Israel is meant to, right? We are supposed to influence the world. We're not supposed to be the private religious community that just sticks within itself, right? We say, right? The families of the earth. People say nations, but really it's the families of the earth shall be blessed through you, through through Abraham. And the influence of Israel, we have to participate in the political world, right? We're not alone. There's other parties around us. And we're told, right, that they're not all supposed to become Jewish. And presumably, they need to be able to talk to, like I'm saying, even when we want to build the temple, and maybe, again, we'll be able to go to Lebanon to get cedar. How does that happen? Who's paying for that? I'm saying there's a whole system that has to happen over there. And we need a state and sovereignty and law and an economy. All these things are necessary, right? Because otherwise we can't influence the world. So the kingdom of David is not only for Israel. It's a political vessel through which Israel can bring blessing to the whole world, ultimately. That's what we want to be doing. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, as we often do, Rav Kook, but he says there's different forms of monarchy. He has this cute idea about England. He says there's hard monarchy and there's soft monarchy. And he says people look at England, right, like the Queen of England at the time, but or the King of England at the time during Rav Kook, but basically saying that, it's not serious. But Rav Kook has this insight and says that basically the king is not great because people are dependent on like his favor, really. The king is great because he helps people mature into a place where they could govern themselves, right? Like, you don't need me if you're a very immature society. You need me to be the king that's in charge and making all these decisions right now. But as you grow older, I could take a back seat because you guys could, achieve something greater together, right? So how this connects to Zionism, or at least the way I try to understand these things, which is, well, when he was younger, to be fair, when he was younger, Rav Kook had this idea that he took from there's Rabbi Hillel in the Gemara says that Israel may not need a personal Messiah. He says because they already killed it. Like, they had that chance and they missed it, and there's no more Messiah anymore. However, that opinion gets rejected. He's not seen as a heretic for saying that. However, it gets rejected. But Rav Kook goes back to that and said that there's like a deep meaning over there, which is that maybe the Messianic force could appear through, right, like a national awakening and in the people itself. However, that idea, I think the idea of the Davidic king really can't be erased. For thousands of years, that's what we've been looking for and striving for. And this is an image that's really part of the soul of our nation. So while there's that play with that, I don't know how much weight that carries. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
It kind of reminds me of when you said that. I think you said the Nazi was saying that maybe now you can't fathom it right now. Like, why would we want a king? But you're waiting for the point where you will be able to accept that, or it will become evident to you. It reminds me of Korbanot, about sacrifices. Like, at this point, it's kind of, and it has kind of like a similarity with it being having a king, which is kind of like a request with something that is like almost like a compromise in a sense.
Yeah,
right, seems foreign.
It's hard to imagine us requesting, or for a lot of people, it's hard to imagine like us requesting to have to do those sacrifices again, animal sacrifices specifically.
Right.
But the idea is that when you will be at the point where you could have them back, then you will be able to consider, like, is this like now, like, you will understand how appropriate or it really is, right? And I get the sense of that just thinking about the temple as well. I kind of like not struggle, but I kind of think about this idea of like hoping for the new temple to be built. Like, what does that mean? So I tend to think about it a little bit like what of like the fact that the temple. Now I had a way to put it, but now I forgot it. But like, you can think about it that if we are so united that there is a place that we can all go to and we can all worship together, like going to one big stadium and watching a rock show and everybody doing that, then we will understand how important a temple is. because a temple is like a rock stadium, but just on steroids. Because you do it all the time. It's not only about music. It's about your entire life. It's like there's so much in it that if the whole society can sustain the idea of a temple, then that's the point. The point is the society being able to sustain the idea of a temple, not the temple itself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I do have one question about this idea of the Messiah and nationalism, if that's okay, which is basically, so have you ever heard of the concept, or have you ever heard of the idea of like Dunbar's number?
Sure.
So I think that might tie into the idea of nationalism in the sense that there's an idea that you can only manage what's in your local control, and so there's an idea that Jews should sort of focus inwardly because they can only they only have so much energy to focus on themselves than on other nations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but but we've influenced the whole world, right? We influenced the whole Christian world, and we influenced the whole Arab world, and that's just from this little people. Think of all the Eastern religions. No one was connected to that, and then comes like a certain point of history where suddenly there's an explosion, right? Of what's happening. The West meets the East, and so like and it has tremendous amount of influence on the world. So I don't. You are cyber conversation, which is. This is true about all countries, and this is true about individuals. Everyone should look inwards, obviously, before they start lashing out at other people. Having even more so when you have, or you believe, or you claim to have some sort of responsibility, a spiritual responsibility, you very well be making sure that when you come correct, right? So, like, while I'm very excited about, I can speak very positively, as I do, about like where we are in our place in history, is also like, again, I could zoom out and see amazing things, and I could zoom in and see horrible things that make me extremely depressed, right? It makes me think like we're seeing the exact opposite, which is like a very scary tension to be part of. However, Gilad, you ready to get into like who's Mashiach, but We'll keep it light, but the Rambam's view, because again, we spoke about different versions over here, but I'm trying to stay somewhat with some sort of narrative over here.
If I could just I wanted to
respond
to something from before. So first of all, hi. I hope everyone's doing as well as possible. Two things that came up for me. One is when like the nations would be blessed by Israel, etc. I personally see that as a sort of calling that the Jews have always throughout Jewish history have upheld to the extent they've been able to. So whenever there was
at its best
tragedies, yeah, I'm just saying, like whenever there were tragedies, famines, human suffering in the vicinity of Jewish communities in the diaspora, it's quite clear that the trend is that the Jews that had the wealth to aid people in those times had acted to do that. So I don't know if I would connect that phrase specifically with the notion of the land, of return to Israel. And you're muted, so I don't. Yeah.
Wait, you said you had another thing you wanted to say.
Yeah. The second thing is regarding Ben's point about when we when we want to have a king, it would be, we can't fathom it now, but when we reach the point we would all want it, and we can't fathom making animal sacrifices, but when we reach that point, we would see it. I mean, it might be something, I don't know. You could take this critique coming from outside or from within, like you could base it on text or not, but I think there's a real danger in just inverting that. And I think we see it happening right now, which is, it's tempting to say, oh, it's okay, we can't see it now, but we'll see it then. And then that's the human nature is going to say, right. So let's start to understand, how it makes sense to have a king or to take all the land or to make animal sacrifices, because we already know that that's where redemption happens. So let's hasten it, right? And I think, I find that sure, there's a truism. I'll just finish the point. There's a truism about when you ask me okay, but would you agree to a temple when you actually want a temple? I mean, of course, that's a truism, because I want.
I think you're touching upon a very important point, and you're right. And unfortunately, I could talk about it in this, in maybe this very romantic way, right? And I'll take more than that, well, actually, I don't even need to go to that place, but the same verses that I'm basing the things I'm talking on, right, could easily, and we know, could turn people violent, could make people have, right? So on the ground, and we were talking about this earlier, which is there's this balance that you have to obviously keep. To not to Ben's defense, because you said I don't think it was such a critique, but I don't think Ben was even saying, which what you're saying is true. Someone could hear that and say, okay, so sacrifices and things like that, and let's just go up to the temple, because I could hasten this, I can't imagine it right now. I'm just going to make it happen. And once I'm in it, then I'll be able to imagine it, and then it's going to happen. So I don't think that's what Ben was saying. Ben was saying that, we can't fathom that kind of idea, not saying and now we should start having sacrifices, rather that in this future world, right, who knows what kind of experience we're having now. I should also say that that's one interpretation, right? Obviously, there's a people that see it only as a Beit Mikdash, and there's people that see it as a Beit Tfilah, Lechol Ha'amim. And there's people that read it as there's going to be sacrifices, and there's people that have a much more dialed down version of that. And that's why I think even about the character of Mashiach, right? Again, following the Rambam's understanding, right? This is not a magical figure that's coming out of history, and he doesn't need to perform miracles, and nature doesn't need to change, right? This is a leader that emerges from within the Jewish people. There's texts that talk about how he doesn't even know he's Mashiach until it happens. As in just like we know with Abraham, with Moses, right? 80 years, he's doing his thing. He's in Egypt. Who knows? Maybe he's in being a warrior or in Ethiopia. Either at some point he suddenly becomes a redeemer, becomes a leader. So we also believe that that's a possibility as well. Now, what he's supposed to be doing, again, according to the Rambam, he leads the Jewish people. He fights the wars for Israel. He strengthens the Torah. He builds the temple. He gathers the exiles. Again, and there's no order to this, right? The Rambam says, I don't know. We don't know how this is going to happen, right? What necessarily happens first. There could be certain parts that happen first. But what's very important is that the Rambam says that if, I can't remember the exact quote, but if he does all these things, and he managed to make it all happen, then he's Mashiach bevadai. Then clearly this is happening. Then he's the dude, right? Now, what he's saying over here is that Mashiach is being recognized through a historical success. That's how we know it's the guy. It doesn't matter what he claims. It doesn't matter what he does. We'll have to see actually if it manifests. And that's why anyone that says Mashiach, if he didn't unite the people of Israel together, which would obviously mean that there needs to be a conversation with the secular. There has to be many conversations that are going to have to happen on many, many levels. So if that doesn't happen, we won't see success, right? So he's, again, not identified by miracles. He's identified by fulfilling the tasks that he has according to redemption. And that's why before there's a state of Israel, right, we lacked any sort of vessel for redemption. There's no sovereignty, there's no army, there's nothing. So we're just waiting for Mashiach. But today, when we return and we have some sort of sovereignty, and you could say it's not the real sovereignty, we don't just wait for Mashiach. Now we have to actually build a world which Mashiach could appear. And I go back to that joke about Mashiach's here, he's just in traffic. And this goes all the way to the politics, which is there's no way Mashiach could appear, in my estimation, with the kind of government you have right now. Like it can't allow, and I'm going, forget like Arabs, Jews, even right now, politics are so bad. They're like, maybe the flight is going to be too expensive for this dude. Like he can't literally get inside. Like you don't have infrastructure that allows for an education like that. As in, if little Mashiach right now is in Afula in 8th grade, right? He had years of Corona school, war school, 35 kids in a class due to bad decisions made by governments and things like that. So like, again, you're not building the groundwork to allow yourself to have this thing. And it's a problem because this goes back to the Song of Songs. You're sort of thrusted into a moment in time, but the vessels are thin, right? Like you're like, okay, and there's all this energy, there's this holiness out there, but I can't do it right now. I don't have people that are together. I have people that are fighting. I have people that are fighting about religion. Like and I need to sort of do something with this energy. But before we go on to continue in the pasuk, because I think we've exhausted this thing, Gilad, you wanted to say something?
I think also Ben wanted to say something. I didn't.
Oh, sorry. I heard someone say something.
Well, I was gonna go back to respond a little bit. So I'll try to keep it brief.
Please.
I mean, I agree with Gilad. Like I understand where you're coming from, and the way that what I mentioned is more of like it's me thinking through it. I'm trying to understand it. So I don't have a clear way of thinking about it yet. But that's but the way that I understand what you're saying, but the way that I see it, the way that I try to understand the idea of a temple or sacrifices, maybe sacrifice is a little bit too hard to think about, but let's just stick with a temple where I have better analogies to it. Is almost it's like a soft goal, it's a soft idea, just like a Mashiach, at least for the Rambam, right? For the Rambam, he says, I don't know exactly what it is, and for me, I always try to think about it in a secular way because that's how I grew up. And I know that, right? So I can think about, okay, if I don't have the idea of a Mashiach or of a temple, I have another idea of like, everybody living in a good place and being united, or, being able to, all of us go to Mars together and build like the rocket, So I'm trying to make these equivalents of like utopias, or not necessarily utopias, but these like soft ideal goals. But the idea is that maybe it does need to be soft, because if it's hard, you're rigid. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that obviously what you're saying is almost like confusing the means for the goals, confusing the animal sacrifices for the goal, and also almost like jumping ahead. Like if you're thinking that the goal is to do the sacrifices, then you just bring the sacrifice to the temple, and you think like the videos that I sometimes see with people like trying to bring sheep, which is kind of ridiculous, right? But they might be trying to say something specific, but there's a soft goal, hard goal concept, and then they're also like confusing the means for the end. Those are two things that make me think about that.
I just, before you respond to that, I just want to, no, go ahead, Gilad.
Yeah. So I think I generally agree, and I think that is a kind of perennial in some ways, because I think every culture has utopia, right? Whether it's like when it's too rigid, when it's too hard, it tends to lead to disaster and to great tragedies. But I do think that like a soft, like you have to have a compass, and that's like how I sort of think about like the utopia. And then a lot of thinkers have described it. It's kind of like when it stops functioning as a compass and starts to be like a clear vision of like this is what should happen, then human nature tends to be to function very awfully with that. And that's what we've seen, I think, in the cases where that happened. You mentioned Plato and Hegel, Oh no, not you. Kirk mentioned Plato and
The
Hegel.
image of God. That's why we can't draw God. That's why we
Yeah.
can't get an image. I think that's the same problem.
Yeah, and I do think like I agree generally, right? I'm not religious, but I can agree to those things from a secular standpoint. The second thing I wanted to I don't know, clarify is when you were saying, Chazi, like that you don't think Mashiach can arrive with this government. Because I'm ignorant in the mindset of people who are messianic. Is it not the case that Mashiach can come tomorrow or right now or I don't know how that coincides with the thing you're saying with the contract, like signing a contract, for whatever, like an apartment, and say, oh, but if Mashiach comes, then the contract is void.
So
is Chazi Chabad as well, or is he not?
no, so it's, first of all, could it happen? The answer is like, sure, it can happen. I mean, and that, I think some of that is also psychological / theological, also, when you have something that's going to give you hope as well, as like a people in diaspora for thousands of years, knowing that like it can happen every day, it's going to happen. So there's an element to that as well.
Yeshuat Hashem Gerefine, is that like
exactly right? Exactly. I mean, giving people meaning, right? We know this from Viktor Frankl. Obviously, goes a very, 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 very long way. Now, as the messianist, right? There's different interpretations. Now, I'm saying that I'm following right now in this version of me right now, right? In the narrative of this class, I would say that according to the Rambam's reading, right, Mashiach is going to come and he needs to do all these things. And I'm saying for him to do all these things, that could only, like, it's sort of like, if there was no currency right now for some reason, it's going to be very hard for Mashiach to get things done, right? Because how is he so my point being, you need to have a system that works. And if you have a system that is like failing on so many levels, does that mean, again, there's things that we do fantastic and we do great. My point being that I think for a structure, and that's why it's so scary, because if you zoom out, you're like, wow, Israel, regional power, this is amazing. Like AI, like it's awesome. If you zoom in, you're like, but, which is also so ironic and sad, which is like, you guys could be like performing here if you guys just did this right and this right. And much of those things that need to happen, quote unquote, right, many times have to do with personalities, which sounds ridiculous, but has to do with people who don't understand their position. And I was going to say this earlier, but you see this, it relates to the sacrifices. You see this with Saul and Samuel. I was learning this with my son. He comes in and he says, why am I hearing the sound of sheep? And he's like, oh, what do you mean? I kept some of the sheep. We're going to bring it to a sacrifice to God. And he says, yeah, but God told you to destroy everything. Like, what do you think God prefers? For you to bring him sacrifices or for you to listen to him? And the government that we currently have is a model of a Saul government, which is not understanding what it's supposed to be doing. There's ego involved over there. There's mood swings involved over there. It's small. We want David, right? We want someone that understands a much bigger picture. I want the shepherd and I want the person that understands both of these responsibilities. Again, these are general ideas. But so when I say that it can't come right now, the Mashiach that I, map out in my head, right? It seems to me like he can't wear that crown in the current system. Even if we identified him as like, we think this is the dude, we're saying we're only going to know he's the dude once he succeeds. And right now, it seems like we're the ones causing the traffic. Like, as in the time is right, almost like the world is saying like, hey, huge opportunities, world's changing, right? Like things can happen. But like, why are we fumbling again and again and again and again? And again, I hope the things who knows today with what they see in the news, there's 7 other deals happening, but again, like it's Gadol Aleinu, and this is a separate conversation that you Gilad and we have. But my point being, it's almost, to take it very specific, the world is looking at you, and like, again, you're positioning yourself as a regional power, which I want to claim needs to take the world towards, redemption. Yet you still have to be dealing with, then you have to also be dealing with what happened with Ben Gvir this week, right? So those two things are it's crazy, because if you have that kind of energy, you would think you would not be able to achieve the other element. You would think how are you still playing at that level as well? And that's obviously a huge tension that we have. Ben, I don't know what your timing is like right now. Do you got a boogie?
I need to head out.
Okay.
So we'll continue next week with this blessing. Take care, Ben.
Take care, Ben.